Top players in North Carolina continue to leave the state, and choosing the correct level can make all the difference in your recruitment. Welcome back to another episode of the Buckets and Banter podcast. I am your host, George Marshall, here with my co-host and friend, Jeffrey Alexander Bendel. Correct or incorrect?
You're still off. I don't think you haven't gotten any warmer. You're just lengthening
That's
the.
not warmer than the past guesses, which were just absurd.
Bartholomew was actually closer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that'll give me something to work on outside of basketball talk and teaching geometry class this year. Uh, in all seriousness, thank you to our listeners. We're so excited to be back here today. It's been a long summer of ups and downs and goods and bads, and now we're in a position to talk some hoops. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Jeff, your summer is now winding down. So how are you feeling about everything travel ball wise, or what does your current schedule look like?
My summer has wound down. Now we have shifted towards camps, fall leagues, and all of the fun stuff that goes with the preseason excitement,
There
leading
you
up to
go.
November.
Preseason excitement. Don't sound too thrilled.
I
Uh,
am excited, ecstatic.
we're gonna conduct the show similarly to what we've done in the past. The one thing that we want to continue to commit to is just finding ways to help listeners gain information and clarity, but also to do so in a way that candidly can be a bit more concise. So we're going to structure it as follows. We're going to start today with some celebrations before we get into the two aforementioned topics that I spoke on right at the start of the episode. But there's been a couple of really cool things that have happened throughout our circles recently. The first one that I really wanted to celebrate was one of my former players, Zion Walker, 2024 graduate of the Burlington School and current guard on Radford University. Hosted a free basketball clinic in Alamance County. So I definitely want to celebrate him for the hard work that he put in with his family to make that happen. It was a great event. Trey was able to participate as the youngest person there. There were over 30 kids in attendance. And in addition to Zion hosting the camp, former players like Jordan Durham, Ty Outlaw, Miles, and Kendall Hooker, they were all there to support as well as camp counselors. So awesome to see those guys. Brings back so many great memories to be with them, to coach them, and really cool to see Zion give back to Burlington after representing just an unbelievable way. I mean, three-time state champion, all-time leading scorer in the Burlington school history. And then to go to college as a Division I player and come back was truly impressive. So proud of him and so proud of those guys for doing that.
Yeah, Zion, that's cool to hear. I mean, he's made his mark in the Burlington area for a long time. I think we all remember when he was a up and coming middle school star phenom, and then he had the career that he had, and then has obviously had success at the next level. Just good to see those guys still, having a bond and being able to come together and host something like that.
No doubt. You've got a big announcement, though, a big celebration.
Yeah. We both do. I mean, it's a lot of people that listen to this podcast should know Chris Sauce, a good friend of both of ours, is lead assistant at UNC Pembroke. He and his wife, who is also a longtime friend of mine, they are expecting their first child, a daughter, um,
Let's go.
coming up. Yeah, here in February. So big excitement for them, and Chris especially. Becoming a dad. Excited for Jordan too. Obviously, pregnancy is probably not as fun, but it's a exciting time for both of them and myself included.
So I made first of all, congratulations to Chris and Jordan. Truly amazing. I know that we joke a ton about my kids and kind of their craziness. So to have him join the party in that regard is going to be awesome. I made a
Hey,
joke
the
when I
Elmo
made
Splatoon. He's going to have his own version.
he'll be splatooning in no time.
Yes.
But I made a joke about if they name their child, I didn't realize that it was going to be a girl. So now my new joke would be if they name their daughter Bethany Beatrice Queen Sauce, then she would be barbecue sauce. So
That actually, I think that sounds more. Uh, I don't know if normal, but that sounds cooler than the other name you came up with for the boy.
Baxter Bartholomew Quintance.
Yeah, you lost me at Bartholomew Quintance.
I mean, I think that I lost pretty much everyone with that post or that comment, but either way, really pumped for them. Couldn't happen to better people. I know that, it's a huge deal just becoming parents. I know that they're newly married, so they got a lot going on, plus the basketball season starting. If I'm not mistaken, they mentioned in their post that the baby was due in February, so super pumped to hear about the dynamic between Chris and Drew Richards, as that is right in the middle of conference play. So have fun with that sauce.
I'm sure that won't have any effect at all.
No, none. I don't think it'll have any effect. I don't even know why I brought it up. The last one is that we've had some people in the basketball space who we're connected with and who I've worked with and been close to for a while start their own podcast. So definitely want to shout out the Hoops 24/7 guys, Rod Bridgers, Rod Edwards, and DJ. Anytime that you're putting out dope content, informative content to kind of help the basketball space move forward in a positive way, whether it's student athletes, whether it's parents, whether it's coaches, those guys are connected to all three of those groups. So the fact that they're continuing to enlighten the world and kind of give knowledge to certain topics, I think is really important and cool as well. So always appreciate y'all. You'll definitely have a listener in me. Just wanted to make sure that they felt the love with that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's dope. I think there's enough. It's one of those things where there's enough mouths to feed, and there's enough people in the space that good information is good information, no matter where it comes from. They have different reach than we do, especially. So happy for all those guys.
No, no doubt. No doubt. Let's get into the topics. So, the first one is one that has been talked about for a really long time, really since I've been a varsity basketball coach in North Carolina. I would say that this conversation has been pervasive. And I think that you would agree with that as someone who's covered the state for a decade, essentially. So, we're going to talk about why it seems like the top players in North Carolina, regardless of class, it continues to be a situation where whether it's a prep school, a private school, and potentially in some situations, like we'll discuss, even another public school out of state, it continues to be the case that these schools are coming into North Carolina and taking some of the top overall prospects or the top ranked prospects to go to their schools.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. I had some great conversations about this over the weekend that I think changed my perspective a little bit, but would just love to hear your thoughts in that regard.
Yeah, so I think I have a couple of different things to say on this topic. One, I think it's important that you mention top kids, and that's not to disparage anybody else, but I think when you are speaking, you're talking about nationally recognized guys of that nature. These guys that are going to you see Spire, Montverde isn't quite what it was now that Boyle's gone, but Spire, Montverde, IMG, these national powerhouses. I mean, faith families, blooming up into what they are. All these, I mean, Monarch Academy. Like we've seen all these new emerging ones, but it's one of those things where it's been kind of a revolving door of the other than I think we could say Montverde and IMG, maybe a Brewster. There's also Massanutten. Of course, you have these places up north, Hargrave. Um, it's other than like a handful of the staple programs. It's been a lot of just new programs coming in and out. I mean,
Mhm.
we've seen it over the years. I know that they had a long standing history, but like Word of God, I mean, shutting down
Right.
was that was a probably lost a lot of kids to North Carolina. I mean, it wasn't, but 2 years ago they had a Jaden Quaintance who was a top 25 pick in this most recent draft was there. So I think it is a bit of a concern, but I don't really know that it's something that's subject to change or that's something that really needs to change, in my opinion. I'm actually going to zag a little bit, and I think that I just did a quick little glance at 2027 and 2028, and honestly, you kind of have at least in 28 about the same amount of kids coming in as you do going out.
Mm,
So while on one hand we are losing our homegrown talent, we
right.
are still gaining national level guys or equivalent. I think we forget someone like your own guy. I mean, Garen Holmes. He hasn't. He was originally not from North Carolina, but
Right.
he's been here for so long that we just assume that he's. So if he were to leave, would we even like that? Would be considered someone else leaving the state when, in all actuality, he was never really a North Carolina guy to begin with. But I mean, you look at 2027 specifically, you have guys like CJ Rosser, Jordan Page, King Gibson. Obviously, they're going to draw a lot of the attention, but also like um, KJ Terry, he just went
Mhm.
to Hargrave and reclass. James Minland, Dylan Twitty, Karan Watlington, like all these guys have left, but you still have guys like King Kendrick. You know, he was not from the state. He's just been
Right.
here for so long that people are accustomed to it. Matt Allen, Modu and Daya, and several others. So I think it's one of those things. And then you look at 28, Makai Allen, Chacha Walmack, Jaleel Smith, Breela Moses. Hudson Hatch he was from Charleston. So like him
Right.
coming in and leaving, that's almost a moot point. But then you bring in guys like Jameer Nelson, Kenyon St. Louis, Bryce Wiersma, JJ Gray. So it's North Carolina is still in a good place where we're good enough. I'd say we and are good enough, but the state still attracts talent. And
Right.
I think it's one of those things, kind of in similar to what I just said. There's enough mouths to feed where if Chacho Walmack wants to accomplish what he's accomplished in North Carolina, establish himself here, and then go to Virginia and go to a Petersburg, which may not be a bigger school move, if you will, but it is a different platform and a different opportunity, and a different stage for him and different people to be in front of. That still has value in its own right. So I think it's one of those kind of things where it's I don't think it's as big of a problem as people are making it out to be. Now, if we every single year consistently lost our top three prospects in the state, now that would be more of a concern. But I think that there is some type of reasoning behind this for a lot of these moves, at least.
I think that my biggest question first in regards to this topic is there a viable option in North Carolina that could prevent this? And I think that we know who some of the upper level prep schools are in North Carolina, whether it be Combine, whether it be Winston-Salem Christian. You know, back in the day, it was Liberty Heights, it was others like that who kind of were able to bring in not only keep homegrown talent, but also bring in some pretty elite levels of talent from out of state. Obviously, when you start thinking about Winston-Salem Christian, you're thinking about really unique and talented international prospects as one of the kind of focal points of the way that Antonio Lowe builds that roster. But to me, comparatively, like, is there a viable option in comparison? I don't know that the answer is yes. Nor do I know that the state infrastructure could allow it to be the case. So here's what I'm saying. An example is, right? Like, take a look at prolific prep. Obviously, like people are familiar with you and I having a pre-existing relationship with Ryan because of any number of reasons, right? That's near Miami, right? Like that's a pretty big selling point. Like, hey, not only are you going to go to a prep school, not only are you going to be able to lift and have this tailored academic scheduled for your needs, but you're literally 30 minutes from the city of Miami. The weather is beautiful. You have 24, like, I don't know that there is a comparison, if that makes sense. There's a reason a lot of these are in Florida. Like some of the stuff that you have to see, and if you think about like Iowa United's facilities, I don't know if you've seen any videos on this or whatnot, but like to overcome where they are geographically, they truly are at an elite, top of the line facility. And it's a beautiful area just based on the lake that they're near and this, that, and the third. But I guess what I'm asking you is like, is there a viable option to even do it if we wanted to do it on that level? I don't know that the answer is yes.
That's a good question. And I think one thing that you said that actually stuck out to me is not so much the location. Obviously, it's nice to be in Florida and, it's sunny and uh, hot all year round. So you can be outside, you can do all types of different stuff. However, I think it's the schedule. It's the tailored schedule. They're not so much focused on academics. They're more focused on basketball. It's a lifestyle. I mean, I think we've seen. I had a list down as well of programs that you mentioned, most of them, but I think of a program like Moravian Prep as well.
Mhm.
And, they're a program I think that sticks out because they're a stylistic difference from a lot of these other schools.
Absolutely.
And I think that is kind of part of the appeal. A lot of these schools don't have that stylistic change or stylistic difference. Like, what did Montverde sell guys on? It wasn't, man, look at the style we play. It's, we're going to put you in the NBA. So I don't know that there's a viable thing. I've said for years the former Hebrew Academy in Greensboro would have been the place to do it just because you had the infrastructure, you had a giant campus, you had boarding, all that stuff. But that obviously is not a viable option. But outside of your Combine Moravian, Winston Christian, if you don't have the ability to house kids, I think that's our problem. I think we need some type
Mm.
of situation where it's not only housing kids, but it's in a big area near a I would assume an international airport. Not saying Greensboro, but there is one nearby. So
Sure.
it's things like this that don't necessarily meet the eye that could be huge for
Yeah.
an influx of incoming talent.
I mean, I like the way that you're thinking in terms of logistics. Like that's something that I hadn't thought of that point, and I think that it's super important, especially when you talk about international talent and what that looks like, the ability to get those guys. I mean, going back to prolific, like that's a direct pipeline for them into the NBA Academy of Africa. So, I think that the housing point is another critical one. Um, Let me ask you this, though, in connection to this, because I think you brought up a point that I'm kind of leaning towards more now than ever, which is this even an issue? Like, we can't get upset about something that we as a state don't have the infrastructure to provide. Like,
Right.
even if something like this was built, it seems like there are still options. And this is not a knock to Moravian Combine or Winston-Salem Christian. Those teams are as elite as they come. Like, they're good year in and year out for the most part.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they're really well coached and have a plan to be successful long term. But the problem is that you do not see that McDonald's All-American type of kid go there. And so when we have McDonald's All-American potential players, which in the class of 27, let's just keep it real, there were three of them. Like three kids, that's a lot of kids to go out of state and for all of them to go to Florida and for all of them to go to different schools in Florida. Like that is, I think, a very interesting aspect of this. But you brought up the point that I think is so interesting. Like, is this an issue at all? Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's an overblown thing. Maybe it's more a testament of look at how talented we have guys year in and year out. That says
Imagine if everybody stayed.
right. And that's always going to be the what if,
Yeah.
but it's also like, can we knock what we're doing in the moment if we don't have the infrastructure to provide what they need anyway? They being the top 1% of players in North Carolina and in the country. I don't
Well,
know.
yeah. And I was going to say, and furthermore, I mean, it would be a problem if we weren't bringing in talent. Like
Right.
that's the thing I think is our saving grace is if we had five potentially high major kids leaving the state and we had nothing coming in, then yeah, that's a problem. Like we have to figure out new situations. But I mean, I think the other thing that is big for North Carolina specifically is although we don't necessarily have the independent backing like we did 5 years ago or 7 years ago, the private school sector does a fantastic job of continuing to bring in talent from out of state. And I think that, you see it with places like Christ School. I mean, this year with Carmel Christian bringing in Jameer Nelson, you have these Moravian. They're obviously independent, but like
Right.
Greensburg Bay, all these programs, these higher level programs, TBS. I mean, they can bring talent from outside of their area or state, and I think that that's kind of the silver lining in all this is when one door closes, another opens type thing.
I think that for me, it would be how do we keep the kids that are the upper epsilon of the state that are not CJ Rosser, that are not Jordan Page? Like, what I try to think about the reason that I wanted to have this conversation, honestly, was around one situation, which was Makai Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Like that one surprised me, candidly. Now, I don't know the inner workings of what that is, and I don't know the family well, and I don't know the kid well. So I don't know that situation. But I know Joe Badgett.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, to me, I've seen Joe Badgett bring in kids from out of state when he was in private school at an elite level. I've seen him compete and build his rosters in such a capacity where the platform at Queens Grant, even though it's a 2A school in public school, the platform really isn't a problem. Like, he is going to put them in a situation where they're playing elite talent, and he knew that when he grew that group of freshmen all together. So to me, that was the surprising one where it's like, On three, I think that Makai is ranked in the, 50, 60 range, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. That's probably something that if you don't mind looking that up, I would be curious to know.
I think it's close to 75, but I'll look.
But even if that's the case, like, how do you keep that kid? You know what I'm saying? Like, Combine holding on to King Kendrick, I think is tremendous, right? Like, that's a great opportunity for a kid who moved down here from Ohio, but clearly represents the hoop state at a great level, with the CP3 elite team and over the summer, on the East
Rivals
Coast
has them
roster.
at 69. Sorry.
Okay. So if you're talking about Makai being at 69, right? Like that's kind of what I'm saying is like there may not be a solution for a kid like CJ or a kid like Jordan Page. We know that those guys are on a different path. They play for USA basketball. This may be the right thing for them to go out of state to get what they need. But for the other kids, I think that that is where the conversation gets very interesting. It is a testament to the fact that I think that we as a state are developing talent at a high level. And that's a great thing about our coaching. And I think that that's a great thing about our systems that we have in place, our trainers, our players, the mechanisms that we put behind kids to build their brand and their platform. That's clearly very unique. But I think that the problem that we run into is it's like when you have a kid like that, those type of situations, whether it's Chacho, whether it's him, whether it's whoever, you want them to represent the hoop state. And that's not to say that they won't do that wherever they go. But I think to me, that's the biggest quandary with this is like, if we can't keep this, and this kid who's already on a different path because of the situation that we have as a state, are we either one, going to provide something new, or two, how do we make it beneficial for those kids to stay? And that's, I think, the interesting part of this conversation.
Yeah, and I think my parting thought on that would be, I don't know if there's a solution. I think the glitz and glamour. We're in an era where that really matters, and the sex appeal of things is important to not specifically the kids, but the parents making the decision. I think that's a big problem. I don't know that,
Mm.
like we've already said, I don't know that we have an infrastructure in place that we could do something like that. But to Makai Allen's situation specifically, I think he was going to be fine regardless. I think he was
Yeah,
probably going
no
to be
doubt. No
fine whether
question.
he stayed
No
or went.
question.
It's actually, to my earlier point, it's kind of ironic that Joe Badgett, I mean, within a week, 10 days, already had JJ Gray transferred in. So it's
Right.
like, okay, well, you know, sorry to see you go. It's tough, but I'll be all right, type of thing.
Right. A veteran in the space,
Right.
a veteran,
Not new to this.
a savvy veteran. The last thing that I'll say on this before we get to our new topic, and again, you brought up another great point that I wanted to touch on. Greg Olson just commented on this on the Elite Youth podcast or something like that. You think, I think is what it is. Where he was on there and he said sometimes people make these decisions because they see someone else make the decision. And I think that everyone, and I can say this as a parent, wants to say, like, all right, I'm going to do what's best for mine. I'm going to do this, and this because I see that that's the path for Trey Marshall, for Charlotte Grace. That's what I'm going to do. But the second you see someone do something else and you see a glimmer of that attention, the offers, the whatever, that you think that it's working, you automatically are going to be inclined to go and try something different.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's important. Again, we're not saying that any parent has done that at all. We don't know the situations or the inner workings of who has and hasn't left. I'm just saying that as a whole, I wish that we could get to a place where information was key. And, maybe we aren't providing something that we need to provide. And I hope that that information is something that we can share as coaches so that we don't lose talented players. I mean, that's something that I don't want to see happen. I know you don't want to see that happen.
Right. And I want to add on to before I forget to your point, I think if it's working, then by all means, I think it's a good thing for these kids. I bring this up to say,
100%.
a kid that thinks that comes to my mind is Ryan Crotty. I think Ryan
Mm,
Crotty going to Miller School specifically, that just one move, I don't know why. Um, I think that really vaulted him forward. That platform that he was on, I think that really boosted his recruitment. I know he went
yep.
crazy in the summer with Boo. I'm pretty sure it was Boo Williams.
Mhm.
Um, but then he went to Miller School and just continued to stockpile offers, and then eventually
Yep.
went to Oklahoma State, which you know, good for him. I don't
Right.
think he was going to get that same type of love and attention if he'd stayed at Holly Springs, which is not a knock to Holly Springs, a program that's produced a slew of Division I players in the last decade.
Absolutely.
It's more over on just the situation, the team structure, and all the things that kind of surround the situation. More of a basketball move than anything.
I think that makes that's a good way to conclude it for sure. But definitely a topic to continue to keep our eyes on, and for the listeners as well. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. Moving into the next topic, picking the right level collegiately. So this is one that I really want to discuss because recently I've had some players of mine who have even seen some great levels of success in their recruitment take off just based on the level that they've pursued and that has pursued them. And so I know that for you, as someone who has seen this time and time again, players who either go too high and flake out and don't do the things that they're supposed to do or reach expectations, or more importantly, have great collegiate experiences after earning an opportunity to play college basketball. And then you've also seen people on the flip side, Jeff, that have done the opposite, right? And like really gone to a lower level than they were anticipated and absolutely killed it and had the time of their lives and had a great experience. So, would love to hear your thoughts on just the importance of this. And I know that we've touched on this in the past, but the reality is like right now more than ever with the new 5-for-5 rule, with the house settlement that's taken place, with international players, with all of the lawsuits going on. I mean, for goodness sake, like every day it seems like there's a new knock on the NCAA for the things that they've got going on. Definitely want to hear your thoughts on the importance of making sure you're making the right choice off the rip in terms of the level that you're going to.
I think this is a really hard decision making process. And I think, especially now, what I've seen over the years is that the offer sheet ultimately dictates the level, which
Mhm.
is damning for a lot of kids because a lot of kids that get a high major offer aren't ready to contribute at a high major level. So then you have guys who are get complacent and they're eager to leave. They want a different situation, um, or rather they need an opportunity. So you see guys like you said, you see guys that'll go high major, transfer down to the appropriate level, and then go back up. But to my point of the offer sheet dictating where these kids go, Chase Lowe had nothing. A guy like that goes to William and Mary and
Mm,
flourishes. You see these guys.
right.
Cam
Good
Taylor.
example.
Cam Taylor was the first name. I've made a short list of some guys that went to the right level and then transferred up. But Cam Taylor was a no-brainer for almost every school in the region at the time that he was a senior. We were
Right.
begging schools to seriously offer him at Phenom Hoops. And Asheville, I mean, they took a chance on him, and he was almost immediately one of the best players. And then the next year, he was clearly their best player, and now he's going to Florida State. But
And
had
a lot
Florida
of
State
money.
offered him out of high school, had Florida State offered him out of high school, then we would have not seen that.
Right.
So I think a lot of this, context is important here. I think of a guy like Josh Nickelberry who went to Louisville, transferred down to LaSalle, and then transferred back up to Florida State. Like
Yep.
a lot of these examples, I wrote down a couple. So Sebastian Akins goes to Denver. If he had
Mm,
a Wake Forest offer out of high school, he's not going to go to Denver and average double-digit points as a freshman.
right.
But to this point, I think someone like Darren Saran's a great example. He, UC Irvine, balls out, goes crazy, transfers to Stanford, was not a great fit, goes right back to UC Irvine. Talk about having the wherewithal of, hey, I know who I am, I know the level I was successful at, let me stay there and flourish. More people should have that kind of understanding, and it's not, it shouldn't be like at any level. It should be considered an honor and a privilege to play. So I
Right.
don't understand the optics of people are afraid to tuck their tail, especially nowadays. And this kind of goes hand in hand with our last discussion too. When there is money involved,
Yeah,
we
literally
can't
just
be
wrote that down.
talking
Yep.
in maybes and ands. And if when we're talking the difference between hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm gonna be honest, if I'm a high school kid and somebody out of state is off, I'm not speculating, but we're be naive to think this is not happening behind closed doors. If someone's offering me a lump sum of money to go play basketball and I'm already an established basketball player, it's gonna be hard for me to say no. And the same is going on with college. How could somebody say no to life changing money?
Right.
300, 500, a million, you know?
But I think that to me, as you were saying that, I was literally writing down money slash attention. And I think that there is a balance of, and I think that the importance of people's circles around players right now, and this doesn't just mean for Division One players.
Correct.
He circles around all players, whether it's family, whether it's a trainer, whether it's an AAU guy, whether it's a high school coach, whatever. Like having the ability to have realism in terms of your level can set you up on a completely different path. I had very unrealistic expectations as a high school basketball player for myself. And I've said this to my players now all the time. This is why I'm so passionate about coaching in a place where I want to get kids to play at the next level because it's not just about the notoriety of it, it's about your professional network, the education you're getting. Now it's about can you get some money that can start to advance your career path in a way that other people 10 years ago didn't have the option to do. But when I start to think about this, the real thing that I think of is like, do you love the game or what comes with the game? And the UC Irvine example, I think, is tremendous. I think the example of Sebastian going to Denver and then going to Wake Forest is tremendous. But here's a personal example, right? Then one a kid that we know and we've talked about on this podcast before. And I've got a player on my roster currently going through this, and he has handled it in such a mature capacity. And it has really transformed his confidence to a level that I have not seen, and I'm very excited to coach. But how about Toby Harris?
Yeah.
Right? Like what people are missing when it comes to Division III basketball right now is that that is a 4-year deal, but you get 5. So now all of a sudden, what is your thought process as you go into this, right? He was at Brandeis for 4 years. He was an all-conference player, nearly, I believe, an All-American, if I'm
Yeah.
not
If
mistaken.
not, I believe he was close.
So you're in a situation where you go through all these things. Then you go to Iona, you average double figures, you shoot 38%, you're 6'8", and now you're getting invited by the Cleveland Cavaliers to play on their summer league team.
Yeah.
2 years ago, he was a Division III player at Brandeis.
And it's also worth mentioning to just sorry to interject.
Sure.
He held multiple Division II offers, multiple.
Right.
I mean, high level Division II, SAC level offers, and chose. I mean, obviously, some people have the financial ability to go to a D3 for 4 years, and as opposed to be on a scholarship somewhere.
Right.
But the point remains is that he chose to go to a lower level, if you will, to you know nourish or nurture the fit, and that's kind of where he flourished. But continue. Sorry.
And I think that that speaks to his love of basketball because he didn't make that decision to go make money. Now,
Right.
he probably made a little money at Iona. It's right for us to assume that at this point. He would be worth it,
Yeah.
candidly. But I also think that one of the things that when you talk about Division II, Division III opportunities versus the pursuit of being a Division I player, there are many teams, and we've said this before, at the Division II and Division III level that certain Division I teams will not play because they know the way, the style of play, the physicality. They know that those teams are better than them, and they can't risk the optics of losing to a team like that. There is risk involved when those teams are on your schedule, 100%. But the importance for people who are making these decisions, in my opinion, comes back to the fact that people have got to know, and especially student athletes and their parents, you've got to make this decision fast. It's the people who enter their senior year and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait in this pursuit of something when other opportunities are on the table where you are putting yourself at a very, very, very challenging risk. Because the reality of the situation is Division III and Division II money, Division III being all academic and Division II being athletic and academic, that well runs dry.
Yeah.
So if you're in a situation where now it's the spring and you're trying to get to a Division III school, I mean, I've seen players of my own struggle with this. And it becomes a huge financial burden when you're talking about paying full tuition at an out-of-state private school or even an out-of-state public school. College isn't cheap. So my advice to families, and the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because of, and I'm hoping that within the next couple of weeks, it might even be cool to have my player on to discuss the process and try to provide some insight into this as a guest on the podcast, because I know that he would feel comfortable doing it. but I've never seen him in a better place emotionally. I've never seen him in a better place confidence wise or with his leadership. And it's because one of the things that happens in the basketball universe is that when you make the decisions that are going to directly align to your skill level and who wants you, when you truly pursue a school that wants you to be there, suddenly everything clicks. And now suddenly it becomes a situation where when we're scrapping and clawing to go to elite camps, I mean, Jeff, he's got 6 visits set up over the next 6 weekends. Like you're talking about top 25 schools in the country. And a lot of people don't realize that about these Division III schools, one of which played in the national championship last season. So it's very important to me that if any student athlete were to ever listen to this or their parent, that they take the time and the diligence to respect all levels of basketball. It is not a slight to you, no matter how much you've trained or no matter how many AAU games you've played, for you to be a Division III player. And I know that because of Toby Harris. Because Toby Harris would walk into any gym right now in high school and he would light the gym up completely. And no one can tell me otherwise. And that's just what it was. And that wasn't due to his 1 year at Iona. It was due to his 4 years at Brandeis and the great parents, circle, Durham Academy experience that he had the 4 years prior to that. So I don't know if you have any other additional thoughts. I know that I just kind of went ether on the
No,
subject.
I agree with everything you said. I think just to kind of add on to what you were saying, there is it seems that there's a stigma surrounding Division III basketball specifically.
Right.
I get it. Everybody wants to get a scholarship, athletic only scholarship. Fine, I understand. The problem being is that there are not enough scholarships for the people that think that they're Division II.
Correct.
Awesome players. I've said this before. Awesome players go Division III every year, and
Mhm.
Toby Harris is just one of many examples. I mean, Adam Brazel. Think of a guy like that,
It's funny you mentioned, yeah,
undersized guard, and he chose to stay. He chose to go back to Hampton Sydney when he had Division I offers, and during his 5th year, he could have left. I
right.
mean, Houston Hubbard did leave, and he went to Baylor. So it's like there are other avenues for these guys, and it really does come down to going to the right level. Another guy, as you were talking, that came to my mind, Josh Scovins, had to
Mm.
had to beg schools to go after him, and then he goes to Army, kills it, and then where does he go? Davidson. I mean, it all works out when you go to the right place. And again,
That's a great example.
I hate that it has to be the offer sheet dictates things, but go, like you said, go where you're wanted. I mean, think about it like this. If a high major school offers you $250,000 and a mid major school offers you five, who wants you more?
That's right. Yeah, it's a
You
great
know,
point.
in the times of money, who wants you more? Go to the highest bidder if it's the right situation for you.
Yeah.
You know,
The last thing that I would say specific to Division III basketball is that academic money is a result of academic success in high school.
yeah,
So please understand that if you're a student athlete who's listening to this, or you're a parent of a student athlete who's listening to this, especially if you're in the ninth grade, the eighth grade, whatever the case may be, that clock starts the second you're a freshman in high school. And the reason that I've seen people earn those opportunities at these elite schools, whether it be, a Tufts or a Williams or U Chicago or Carnegie Mellon or like what Washington and Lee, whatever, where we've seen kids go, right? That is a byproduct of great academic success first. These teams do not have the luxury of casting a net that is significantly wider than people can assume. They have a very small subset of kids that they can reach out to. And in order for them to recruit them, you got to have the grades. So to me, I just think that kids could have a hugely successful year and a hugely successful career, excuse me, by picking the right level. And I think that that pursuit is always something you should strive for. But like you said, who's recruiting you is ultimately the greatest dictator of what's going on.
totally.
Cool. Sound offs. You ready? I know that
Yeah.
you're not really in scorched earth mode. I'm definitely more interested and excited for mine.
Well, then I'll let you kick it off.
No, no, no. I gotta end this one. I gotta end this
All
one.
right, fair enough. Yeah, so I'll say I went by a CP3 camp this past weekend. CP3 Rising Stars, national camp always has a slew of the top talent. Now that they've expanded from rising freshmen to rising sophomores and freshmen, and now girls, they've done a great job continuing to expand that. my only point, and this is pertaining to all camps, especially with phenoms top 80s and freshman 40s and sophomore 40s and all that stuff coming up. It's important to always play hard and play the way that you want to be seen by everybody.
Hmm.
Don't change up because of an individual matchup, because of people jawing at you. Um, I just think that there's value in being who you are. And it's one of those things where you never know who's watching. And I'm not saying me, but let's say somebody like me, I can put out something on a kid that stands out, and maybe somebody else sees it, and then from there, it's one of those things where it's just like, just for these young kids, especially, obviously they're still young and developing maturity, but it is important to carry yourself with a sense of professionalism in these talent laden settings.
I wish that we could make that its own separate topic. I really value everything that you just said. Um, and I'm hoping that kids can get out of that too cruel world because you see it every year, kids that approach that. I mean, it was like that. There were some kids like that at Zion's camp, like no question. And then there were some other really, not even necessarily as talented, but lesser talented kids who just worked their butts off and just immediately stood out as like, oh man, this is awesome. But what's funny about what you mentioned is I bet some of those top players at that camp handled it with a level of professionalism that you would say they should have and
I
what you
mean, a
expected
guy
from.
like Mason Collins is just, he's one of those kids that comes to my mind when I think
Sure.
about this. I mean, talk about a guy that's just been such a polished individual for so long. I mean, there's never been any questions about his character, his attitude, his demeanor, his leadership, et cetera, et cetera. His intangibles. You got to go on and on. I mean, a kid, everybody should strive to be like that.
No, I totally agree. Um, cool to see the future talent. Hopefully, kids definitely listen to that message. I think it's one that is needed for sure. Mine is about energy. Um, I think that we're in a time now where we've discussed this multiple times. Adults really are the ones that are impacting the state of basketball in a negative way. Kids are a direct reflection of whatever the adults are in their circle and what the adults allow in their circle. For me, what I think is a big indicator of this is the energy that adults have towards one another. It's important to me that people know, whoever's listening to this, we do not all have to get along. We do not all have to be friends, but it is imperative that you keep that same energy in every single space that you are in with said person. I think that it is this idea of like, we say whatever, we do whatever, we go behind someone's back, we do X, Y, and Z. But when I see you face to face, now suddenly it needs to be a big dap and a hug and a what's up, man? How's your family? It doesn't need to be like that. That's weird behavior.
Keep
And
it
I'll give
pushing.
you a perfect example of it. There's a person that was working at Zion's camp, and he and I don't see eye to eye. This is not a parent who was there, so I don't want anyone to hear this and say, "Oh, he's talking about the parents. He's talking about the kid."
Talking about a TBS parent.
That's not what is happening. So this is someone that, again, we are at odds with whatever it is that we think in basketball, this, that, and the third, whatever, right? We acknowledged each other's presence. There wasn't some warm fake dap where we had to talk to each other. We did not speak again the rest of the event. But you know why I respect that person more now? Because when my son was at his station, he coached him with joy the same way that he coached every other kid. And guess what? We didn't speak after that either. That's what interaction should be. If I don't get down with you and you me, then don't. It doesn't need to be this lovey-dovey situation. And the problem that we're running into right now in North Carolina specifically is that there is so much of this fake nonsense between adults. It doesn't have to be excessive or aggressive or, oh, it's up in the parking lot and all this immature nonsense. What it has to be is a level of, listen, respectfully, I'm going to keep my distance. The people who are going to provide and pour into positive energy for me are the people that I'm going to surround myself with and that I'm going to go interact with. And I respect people who are able to keep a distance with that and not turn it into something that it doesn't need to be. But for goodness sake, like if we're going to be in this situation as adults, like we got to keep the same energy, period. It doesn't always have to be this fake nonsense. I think it's impacting kids because kids hear and see and replicate all the stuff that adults do. So I think that in some capacity, I'm hoping that this changes. I doubt that it will because of social media, because of this, that, and the third. It seems like everyone on social media says, well, people know I'll get up there and tell the truth and say my piece. I'll say I'm waiting for it. What like what are we talking about? I'm waiting for that to be the case. It just doesn't seem like there's a level of realism within the adults in the space. You don't have to get along with anyone, and that doesn't with everyone, excuse me, but that doesn't mean that you can be disparaging towards a kid in that person's circle. That's not how it's right, how it should go either. We're all in this to see kids be successful. So I'm hoping that there's a greater level of maturity in the for the adults in this space. I don't know that that will be a case. I'm not excessively optimistic that that will happen, but I just hope that everyone can keep the same energy between the people that they either are great with or are not great with.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite sound off that you've ever done. And I also like your add in at the end of um, we're all in it for the kids. It's important to remember that because those a lot of people claim that, but let's remember why we all are in this for real.
No, absolutely. I'm also just realizing now that we're 45 minutes in that I'm wearing a Sesame Street t-shirt.
Oh,
So
I
good
thought that
news
was
for me.
intentional.
That was not intentional at all, but I'm not doing a thing to change it.
Oh, is that not doesn't have a TBS logo on it?
No, no, no. This is full like vintage 80s. I mean, can you see the OGs on
I'm
this
being
shirt?
facetious. You could have like you could just
Oh,
get a
dude,
TBS logo right on the
you've got
Sesame Street.
Grover, you've got Zoe, you like real OGs on this shirt right here, real OGs. And that was unintentional, but I never claimed to be in the cool crowd either. So
Speaking of real
apologies.
OGs,
There you go. Really appreciate the listeners. This was a great episode. Jeff, appreciate you and for us getting back into the content. Well, there'll be more stuff coming up as stuff, whether news or anything comes available in the NBA and college and everything that's coming up. We're going to get back into this little bit more like we were before. Obviously, it's challenging for me during the season, and for Jeff during the season when he's doing things on a weekend basis. But we're definitely excited to get back after it. So thanks so much to the listeners. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.